Okay, so I'm sure we all have certain public figures in mind that we really dislike. In my case, there's more than one. Um, just people that you want to really punch. Now, I wouldn't do it because common assault is it's an offence, but it's metaphorical. You just see person like the person I'm going to talk about, and you just love to give them a smack. And that's not threat of violence, by the way. It's purely metaphorical terms. But I want to talk about the comedian Frankie Boyle. Now, there's a tendency, particularly in this country, for I'd say over the last sort of 20 or 30 years, for certain stand up comedians to feel that the way they can be groundbreaking is to be as outrageous as they possibly can, which means stooping as low as they possibly can. And Boyle isn't alone. Uh, Roy Chubby Brown is another one. But here's my issue. It's not that they're risky. I mean, I appreciate humor isn't going to be like, people want a certain degree of sophistication. They don't want very innocent humor because I think innocent humor can be a little bit simplistic. So the sort of humor that maybe worked in the past, someone like Tommy Cooper, for example, it would be harder to sell that today. I get that because I think that parody and satire, and with that gallows humor, has come a lot more to the fore, so to speak. So I certainly don't expect stand-up comedians to be totally squeaky clean. That would be, that would be naive. But I think there is a thin line between being risky and being politically incorrect versus just being callous. I mean, let's just look at some of the things that Boyle has come out with. And it isn't just his humour, incidentally. I just dislike the man, full stop. Pretty much everything about him. I mean, he's a Scottish nationalist, so I don't even like his politics. He's also stooge of the Kremlin because his shows have been promoted by RT. He's got some connection with RT anyway. I don't know what it is, but it's hardly surprising. He's very anti British. Anyway, let's look at some of his charming lines that he's come out with over the years. Incidentally, I've been looking at an article from The Spectator by James Delingpole, who used to be a fan of Frankie Boyle, and the article is actually entitled "Frankie Boyle is a cowardly bully, and I'm ashamed I ever stood up for him." So this is some of the charming things he's come out with. He has attacked the physical appearance of women. For example, the Olympic swimmer Rebecca Adlington, accusing her of having an unfair advantage by possessing a dolphin's face. Now that's a pretty cheap ad hominem attack. He suggested that Camilla Parker Bowles was what Princess Diana would have looked like if she survived the crash. And it gets even more, he scrapes a barrel even further. Um, he made a very classless sexual reference to Jordan and her disabled son Harvey, which was well publicized. I mean, attacking a disabled child, how low can you get? Um, Apparently, he made one about Jimmy Savile and Madeleine McCann. I don't know the nature of that, but I can guess what that involved. Delling Paul says it's so vile he can't repeat it. Um, he made an absolutely tasteless remark about Angelina Jolie and breast cancer. I mean, we're not talking about one or two badly judged jokes. This is what this guy bases his entire career on. And sadly, I know he has support. I know he's successful. And what can be said about that except it's a pretty sad indictment of humanity. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that comedians should be squeaky clean. And I'd be a hypocrite if I said, oh, I just want them to be, nice and polished and only something your grandmother would approve of. Not at all. I understand there is a place for edgy humor. I get that. And it's even quite important when we consider parody, satire, and so on. But really, there is a fine line between that and just being a bully. I mean, this guy is a bully. That's all he is. And he's pretty left wing, so he's also a rank hypocrite. He'll attack the Tories for their treatment of the unemployed and so on, and he takes up lots of socialist causes. And yet, traditional socialism supposedly about compassion. Well, this guy is one of the least compassionate people there is. I mean, he gets away with stuff because I think he is politically left wing. I think if he was, well, no, that's not true because Roy Brown's pretty right wing, so I suppose I can't say that. But what pisses me off is it's kind of this facade of humor, i.e., because someone hides behind humor, then anything goes. I don't think comedians should be above scrutiny. Um, I'll just say it. I think Frankie Boyle is a piece of shit. I have zero respect for him. I think he's a despicable, nasty turd of a man. And I just see his smug face and I really want to smack it. Um, I just think I just think it's sad that people defend him and they can't see that, he's not attacking powerful people. He's attacking people that can't defend themselves. I mean, when you're taking cheap shots at a disabled child, you're a degenerate. Frankie Boyle is a degenerate. Um, and when I see him in interviews, he's just such a smug git. God, I can't stand him. I mean, what an absolute. Well, you get the drift. I do not like Frankie Boyle. And I think when you get comedians like that who scrape the barrel, I mean, an example of Roy Chubby Brown, he made a joke about the Bradford City disaster. Just to recap, a disaster where 56 people died days afterwards. That he wasn't invited to the barbecue. Yeah, funny. The thing about that sort of humor is it's like rubbing salt into the wound of survivors of such tragedies. It's one takes thing taking a swipe at the powerful. And being politically incorrect, there's a place for that. But it sickens me, quite honestly, that these sort of comedians are held up as some sort of, whoa, radical. He's being politically incorrect. Let's praise him. Let's just be like idiotic sheep. I really, frankly, hate his guts. Some might say, why do you take it personally? He's not done anything to you. No, but it's about values, and I dislike bullies. And I see Frankie Boyle as a bully because he takes cheap shots at people who can't defend themselves. And even if they can, even if they are prominent figures, it's just the resort of a degenerate who isn't capable of coming out with reasonable, rational arguments about things. And I don't think he should be taken seriously. I mean, I don't think what I mean by that is I don't think he should be held up as some sort of spokesperson. If the Scottish Nationals had any sense, they would not be using this guy as one of the faces of their agenda because he's an embarrassment. If I were Nicola Sturgeon, I would be embarrassed, quite honestly. But like I say, he's not the only one, and unfortunately, people do gravitate to it because people I mentioned recently that people have an interest in the dark side. I mentioned that there's this interest in serial killers, but I also think that you need to have values. If there's no values, if there's no sort of red line on anything, then what do we have left? So if his defenders basically say, oh, he's just a comedian, anything goes, then I challenge them. I challenge Frankie Boyle fans. This is a challenge for his defenders. Let's say someone close to you died young. Let's say they died of cancer or in a car crash or some tragic circumstances. Now, let's say Frankie Boyle made a joke at their expense. Would you be defending him? I very much doubt it. So I think there's a lot of hypocrisy from his fans because they defend him when the joke's at someone else's expense. But I very much doubt they'd be groveling to defend him if it was someone that they cared about. So I think he's a piece of shit. And I hope he goes off the radar. Unfortunately, it probably isn't going to happen. He has a lot of support. But I just want to vocalize that. That's how I feel about it. I just see his smug face and I see his callous, nasty streak. What horrible, despicable turd of a man. Nah, I don't even want to call him a man. He's a card. He's a card because, like all bullies, he targets people who can't defend himself. Like Harvey Price, targeting a disabled child. What an absolute scumbag.